welcome to Full Court Cleveland right here on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Nick Padone filling in for our guy Rafa Hernandez Brito, joined by longtime Cleveland Cavaliers writer, journalist Sam Amico. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. At the time that we're recording this, the Cavs are on top 2-0 against the Miami Heat. Sam, it's awesome to have playoff basketball back in Cleveland.
Finally, and high hopes with that playoff basketball. Obviously, now as we're sitting here today talking, the series is shifting to Miami. They always say the series doesn't start until both teams have played a road game. So I guess the series is about to start. The good thing is Cavs with a 2-0 lead.
2-0 lead feels so good, especially in the first round, especially when you look at the way that they've won these two games. Game 2 did get close. The Cavs ultimately won it 121 to 112. But things got interesting there down at the end. Sam, what were your initial reactions to Game 2?
There wasn't, even though Miami cut the deficit from 19 to 2, and there was just like a little more than 3 minutes left. It was 103-101. I didn't at any point really think the Cavs would lose, but I'm just like, they shouldn't have allowed it to get so close. Part of that, a big part of that is something that Kenny Atkinson's preaching, which is when we're feeling confident and comfortable, we've got to still go out and make those hustle plays, because especially against the Heat, because that's their only chance is to make the hustle plays and to beat the Cavs on the boards and get rebounds and defend and try to get away with some fouls, which they did. But that's, the Cavs eventually just finished the job. They put their pedal back down to the metal and finish the job.
My favorite thing about the NBA playoffs, especially for like the Cavs, who have gone through 4 straight trips to the finals, and we've been blessed with some great playoff runs here in Cleveland, is throughout the stretch of a playoff run, you find villains. Each and every couple of weeks, a new villain arises. The first villain of this Cavs playoff run happened to be Tony Brothers last night. What did you make of the officiating down the stretch in Game 2?
I think Tony Brothers is a good ref for the most part, but I think that whenever his crew, he's always the head of the crew. Whenever Tony Brothers brings a crew and he's the head of the crew, it's always an adventure. I will say that, and that's kind of the kinder version, but some of these calls, and then the calls that the Cavs challenged, I'm like, and they won both challenges. I'm like, how did you not see that? There's 3 of you out there. Are you auditioning for a role in 3 Blind Mice? And to me, I'm just like, I don't understand. Do we need to add a 4th official to some of these games? Because there's no reason. It used to be long ago two refs per game.
Yeah. And
now with it being 3, I'm like, they should never miss a call. But they blew 2 very obvious calls, and
And then
I think that helped Miami.
It's nice that you could challenge, and it's nice that Atkinson is good at challenging, but it does slow the game down to a halt, especially when things were close there, like you just wanted to get back to the action. It was that was one of the most baffling endings to a basketball game that I could remember. And the good thing is that they were able to just escape that mess, whatever happened there in the fourth quarter, scot-free with a win. That's the nice part about the playoffs, is a win, no matter which way you cut it. The Cavs have 2 big wins, 14 to go until their ultimate quest for the NBA championship. Well, Sam, on today's show, we are going to break down some Cleveland Cavalier headlines brought to you by Ken Ganley Ford. We're going to do our power rank presented by Garage Beer, take a drive around the NBA and what's going on in the playoffs elsewhere, presented by Infinity. Stay tuned. Cavs headlines, what's going on in the playoffs, what's going on when this series does flip to Miami. We'll answer those questions and more when we return right here on Full Court Cleveland.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Pure AV, luxury home automation. Experience your dream smart home by visiting pureavcorp.com.
Welcome on back into Full Court Cleveland right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Cavs headlines brought to you by our friends at Ken Ganley Ford. They have 2 convenient locations in Parma and Norton, and right now they are proud to announce employee pricing for all. That's right, you pay what the employees at Ken Ganley Ford, Parma, and Norton are paying for nearly any new Ford. They offer an extensive inventory of vehicles, friendly team, state-of-the-art Ford service center on site. Make sure to check them out today, KenGanleyFordParma.com. We're not going to try to do the Spanish version of this read here,
I did that last week, and I think it was a smash hit. But beyond that, I don't know that I want to try that again.
Yeah. So for the people in Spanish, Ralph should hopefully be back next week. For this week, KenGanleyFordParma.com should translate the same in Espanol.
Yes, it does.
Darius Garland, post-game, had some fun comments. Said that the Cavs need to pick on Tyler Herro and take care of the ball. You know, a lot of people nationally will try now to run with this headline, trying to pit DG against Herro. Yeah. What did you make out of those comments when Garland said it?
Well, the first thing I thought when he said it was, boy, that's going to be good for the website. and then after that, I kind of thought, I can't believe that he called him out like that. But, you know, the reality is that's what they're doing. That's part of the game plan is, you know, isolating guys on Tyler Herro and not just getting shots out of that, but you know, if it's Donovan Mitchell or Max Strus or Darius Garland or Ty Jerome and they get matched up with Tyler Herro, they're able to create offense as well. So, you know, look, Tyler Herro looked like Jerry West in game 2. I mean, he just did whatever he wanted. He was 9 of 10 on floaters in the lane. He's an amazing offensive player. Defensively, right, you know, Darius Garland spoke the truth. I'm just surprised he went out and said it. But frankly, there's not much Tyler Herro is going to be able to do about it because he's not a very good defender.
Bizarre. It is like textbook, like UFC, WWE kind of like trash talk before a match from Darius Garland, but I like it. You know, I think it's a lot of fun. A lot of people are worried about bulletin board material for Miami. I think that would maybe mean something a little bit more if Miami had enough dogs in this fight to compete with the Cavs. I just think, you know, I'm sure it is bulletin board material, and I'm sure it will motivate Tyler Herro in the Heat. It's just that the Cavs are a better team. So I don't know how much that's going to factor in and how much that's going to matter.
Well, that's the point. The Cavs are deeper. They're more talented. I mean, you know, they're a number 10 seed. They won, 39 games or something along those lines. So, great respect to them in the sense that Eric Spoelstra could probably coach a toaster to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they just don't have the depth. They don't have the star power, and bulletin board material, big deal. You're right, Nick. I don't think they're going to be able to run with it.
Speaking of Eric Spoelstra, you know, a lot of people here in Cleveland were a little bit worried just about this matchup because Spoelstra, Heat culture, all that good stuff. The one thing that I'll say is in game 2, shout out Eric Spoelstra because those Nikola Jovic threes in crunch time, Sam, I think he airballed 3 threes in big moments of the game.
Yeah, you know, their rotation has gotten very interesting to me, Miami's, with obviously playing Jovic. I'm not sure what happened to Jamie Jaquez Jr., who was part of the rotation and really seemed to be an energy guy and a hustle guy, but he's fallen out of the rotation. So, yeah, I mean, Eric Spoelstra, look, his schemes and his adjustments are almost unmatched. But when you just don't, you know, the NBA is a players' league, and if you don't have the talent, and they don't when it comes to their matchup with the Cavs, it's only going to take you so far.
Have you heard? You've heard the conspiracy about Jaime Jaquez Jr., right?
I have not, but I'd love to.
We won't. We don't have to break it down on this show. Tune into the Big Factor. Shameless plug here on the Big Play Sports Network. Download our app. Tune into the Big Factor. We broke down the conspiracy as to what's going on with Jaime Jaquez Jr. And our off-camera producer Ryan is
very excited. I see.
Yeah, motioning as to what that conspiracy could be. All right, this series is flipping to Miami. We're going to South Beach. Traditionally a tough place to play during the regular season. You usually hear a lot of stuff about the South South Beach flu. It's always hard. I don't really care who the opponent is to play on the road in the playoffs. I don't think Heat fans really get into playoff basketball the same way that our Cavs fans here do in Cleveland. It's still hard to win on the road. What do the Cavs need to do, Sam, in your mind, to go to Miami and to finish off this series kind of in short order here?
Yeah, they're going to have to focus on the things that they kind of didn't focus on in Game 2 in the fourth quarter, which is I thought their defense was okay, but they've got to be able to do those intangibles better than they did in fourth quarter Game 2. And sometimes if the Cavs have a small Achilles heel, it's that. Okay, we're up 19. And I just think that's human nature. I don't know that it's exclusive to the Cavs, but then all of a sudden they stop boxing out. They just start reaching for rebounds as opposed to, practicing the fundamentals. They're not getting 50-50 balls, as Coach Kenny Atkinson will tell you. So if they are able to do those things, then you're able to overcome, okay, we're not making shots because it's the road. Things aren't clicking. Our rhythm's not there because we're on the road. If you can do those other intangibles, then you should be able to do it. And more than anything, you need your role players to have a big game, whether it's a Ty Jerome, a DeAndre Hunter, anybody outside of the core four, Max Strus. If those guys, one or two of those guys play well, they'll take both of those road games.
Well, one of the big pieces that came out of the last two games was Ty Jerome was officially nominated as a finalist and then snubbed for the NBA Sixth Man of the Year. Boston's Peyton Pritchard ultimately wins the award. Malik Beasley from the Detroit Pistons finished second in voting there. DeAndre Hunter finished fourth. Do you think Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter being on the same team might have hurt them? Obviously, as two individuals that watch the Cavs pretty closely every single night, it really would have been cool to see Ty Jerome take home that honor because he has meant so much to this group throughout the entire season.
You look at games, even Game 2, where the Cavs were down 13-5. This is just an example of Ty Jerome. He only had 6 points in Game 2. After scoring 28 in Game 1. But if you look at Game 2, when the Cavs were down 13-5, they put Ty Jerome in, and the entire face of the offense changed. There was a new energy, and he means so much to winning. And that's not to take anything away from Peyton Pritchard, because obviously he was a strong candidate as well. But if I look at Ty Jerome, to me, he's got to win something, whether it's Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, things. Somehow he needs to be rewarded because he has meant so much to a season that's really been a dream season, 60-plus wins for just the third time in franchise history.
Well, and the nice piece of what Boston has going for them, at least in my opinion, is that they have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are two aliens. You have Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis as well, which are dream complementary pieces. So you have 4 out of 5 of your starters are really good players that are mostly the reason as to why the Boston Celtics are in winning position. And that just makes life all the sweeter for Peyton Pritchard when he's able to come off the bench because there's not as much pressure on him. Whereas the Cavs have the core 4, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think the ilk of Brown and Tatum mean a little bit more to Boston than what the core 4 mean to us, and it truly has been a balanced effort out of our Cavs this whole year. And you look at what Ty Jerome does off the bench, setting the tone as both a ball handler, distributor, and somebody that could score the ball and that took over many games for the Cavs and won the Cavs many games this season. It would have been cool to see him win it, but as is life.
Yeah, I think I've been shorted out of a few awards in my own lifetime.
Same here.
I don't know what those
Same
are.
here.
But,
who do we call about that? How do we get people angry tweeting that we were snubbed out of awards?
I think we talked to Roth, and he's not here. So,
yeah, I suppose so. Defensive Player of the Year will be announced on Thursday. So when this show is live, we'll be finding out Defensive Player of the Year. And then obviously when it makes its way to TV, we will know if Evan Mobley was the Defensive Player of the Year. And I think he deserves it.
Yeah, to me, he's the Defensive Player of the Year, whether or not the award goes in his favor, especially when you think about the other candidates. I just think he's been a pretty elite, defender for the past, since he's come into the league. But it's really been the case this season. I think he's taken his defense to another level. It's changed the course of games. And when you factor in that he's now getting, and this this may not sound like defense, but he's now getting defensive rebounds and dribbling the length of the court and creating offense off the defense. I think that should be considered. So, it sounds like Draymond Green's in the running, who's 117 years old. And I just think, to me, nobody changes the course of games other than maybe at times Jared Allen, as Evan Mobley does.
And, everybody with Mobley talks about this year. Everybody knows that this year was a really good leap and a really good step in the right direction for Evan Mobley's development. Everybody knows that Kenny Atkinson deserves a ton of credit for unlocking that. But, Sam, what you just said about his ability to push the ball down the floor and kind of run his own coast-to-coast fast break, that's unstoppable. That's a 7-foot guy running at you like a wide receiver with the intention of dunking the ball on the other end. I don't know, you could throw out Giannis, throw out Nikola Jokic. There is nobody in the NBA that could stop that. And I feel like as Mobley progresses here, again, a guy that's still in his early 20s, that layer of his game is only going to become more dangerous.
Yeah, Kenny Atkinson has turned him into their Draymond Green in that sense, where he's getting the rebounds and, like you said, dribbling the length of the floor, creating offense. And he did that in Game 2 against the Heat, and he dribbled the length of the floor, and nobody else was available, so he just went in and dunked it, And after the game, we asked Evan, how would you rate your performance for tonight after kind of having a quieter Game 1? He goes, pretty good, which is Evan being super excited, So I think you're right, Nick, in the sense that, we don't see 7-footers creating offense as a point forward, which is what he's done.
It's absolutely remarkable. The leaps that Kenny Atkinson has been able to get out of Evan Mobley has been phenomenal. That's a big piece as to why the Cavs are in the driver's seat up 2-0 against the Miami Heat here in this first round. Straight ahead, we're going to power rank our favorite Cavs playoff memories. Huge thanks to our friends at Ken Ganley Ford Parma. Check them out at one of their stores in Parma or Norton. You got to check out their website, kenganleyfordparma.com. We'll be back with more Full Court Cleveland right after this.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Garage Beer. No bitterness, no frills, no IPA, just beer-flavored beer. Find local retailers who sell garage beer near you by visiting drinkgaragebeer.com.
Welcome on back into Full Court Cleveland here on the Big Play Sports Network. Our Power Rank segment on Full Court Cleveland brought to you guys by our friends at Garage Beer. The perfect beverage for postseason basketball. Comes in just 2 flavors, classic light lager and lime. There's no frills, no bitterness, no IPAs. Garage Beer, truly beer flavored beer. You can find local retailers who sell Garage Beer near you by visiting drinkgaragebeer.com. Sam, it's time to power rank our favorite Cavs playoff memories. I don't know that this is my favorite because I think the favorite ever is probably Game 7.
Game 7, I think that we can say that that's the favorite. But
one of my fondest, and kind of might date myself the young direction, was when LeBron hit the buzzer beater against the Orlando Magic his first time around in Cleveland, and the iconic hug with Anderson Varejao. It was one of those early formative sports memories for me where my dad let me stay up really, pretty late to watch that game, and we erupted when that happened and woke up the whole rest of the house. And my mom found out that I was still awake, and it was kind of like a why is he awake type of moment. But that is one that I think I'll forever remember, was LeBron hitting that shot against Orlando. I really thought that was going to be the Cavs' way of clawing back into that series. Obviously wasn't the case, but that's on my list somewhere.
Yeah, I was at that game to show you how old I am. I was actually there working that game, and that's definitely one that it just had that energy. It must have been Game 6 of the NBA Finals in Cleveland against the Warriors in 2015-16, when they won the championship. I've never been in a building that loud. And I just thought, it's really cool that the Cavs were able to get this series to 7. Nobody expected them to win. The Warriors were 73-9. I'm like, good for them. They got it to 7. Maybe next year's their year. And then they go to Golden State, win. But I've never been in a building that's been louder than that Game 6 against the Warriors. And one of my other favorite moments, to be quite honest with you, which I thought was super cool, was Game 1 of the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, here's a team with the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference in Cleveland, and there's no LeBron James on the team. This is a team that's been rebuilt, so kudos to Kobe Altman. But I just thought this Game 1, I was just sitting there, I took it all in for a second, and I was like, this is one of the coolest playoff games in Cavs history.
It's funny that you say that because I had the same thought myself about all of that, about being the 1 seed, about the fact that it's in Cleveland, about the fact that there was no LeBron James. And then that thought only like grew and expanded in my head as they had their way with the Miami Heat throughout Game 1, where it was like, this has a different energy to it, unlike the playoffs that we have had without LeBron. And credit this group that, they've been able to make the playoffs the last 2 seasons, but it felt like off rip 2 years ago against the New York Knicks, you knew that wasn't really going to be their year. They were just out physical. The lights were too bright. We don't need to relive all of that. And then when Orlando gave them as difficult as a run for their money as they did in round 1 last year, you kind of had a similar feeling that Boston was going to be a very tough opponent, and they were. This series, however, has only solidified the belief that this could be for real without LeBron James this time, unlike the prior 2 seasons of making the playoffs without LeBron.
Yeah, you think about the last 2 years, Nick, they were number 4 seed both times.
Yeah.
The first time they were number 4 seed, they were playing a 5 seed in the Knicks that were way more experienced, had way more, were just an older team and had more veterans. And then last year, I just think that they looked worn down in the playoffs for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you're right, that Orlando series never should have gone that far, 7 games. Most people were predicting a sweep for that.
Yeah.
The Cavs just did not deliver in that series. So, yeah, I think that this team is much more confident, much more, I don't want to say motivated, but much more determined and has a much bigger belief in great things. So that's been the difference. And we've seen that throughout the course of the regular season. And that's why they're the number 1 seed.
Other fun Cavs playoff memories that I could think of, I believe it was either 2015 or 2016 when they broke the 3-point record against the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
They loved beating the Atlanta Hawks. Same with like the LeBronto era. I mean, they just ran into poor Toronto Raptors every single year, and it was just never much of a challenge. You had LeBron literally like trying new things they had never tried before in like the Eastern Conference Finals. Like it was always fun to dismantle the Raptors in the postseason.
Well, I think Kenny Atkinson was an assistant on those Hawks teams and they had the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference that year, and the Cavs swept them. So that was a great time. Those are great memories there. One of the first year I covered the Cavs, my first year a full-time Cavs writer, they went to the NBA Finals. So it was 2007. Boobie Gibson, of course, on the team. So I just assumed that was how it was always going to be. It's like, well, this is a great gig. I'm going to be going to the NBA Finals every year. And then, of course, that didn't happen again for another 9 years. But that moment of covering the Cavs the first time and them getting to the finals, when they really probably had no business being there, but that just really, to me, showed, okay, LeBron, we knew he was great. This just puts him on another level, carrying this team to the 2007 finals.
Especially as young as he was.
Yes,
and
right.
as young as the rest of that roster was. Like, they really had no business being there, and that was a really fun run. You had mentioned Game 6, too, like the one lasting memory I think that the fans will have forever, and kind of where it felt like a lot of people in the city of Cleveland, at least, understood that the Cavs had a true chance to win the championship, was the moment when Steph threw the mouth guard and kind of came unraveled, and the building was so loud. Like, that's kind of when people had an inkling that they could win the championship.
Yeah. No, that was that moment of, it seemed like that the Warriors were coming unraveled in that Game 6. And I think that when they got to Game 7, the Cavs had all the momentum, even though it was on the road. So, yeah, I mean, you think about that. Now, there's obviously great moments throughout the course of history that, some of which I never saw, but obviously the Miracle Richfield season, You got to hand it to those guys with Campy, Russell, Austin Carr, and weren't expected to do much in the playoffs, and then ended up beating, at that time, the Washington Bullets. And that made it I've watched highlights of that, and I'm telling you, every game was like that Game 6.
Yeah.
There was no fan control. Plus, they're smoking in the arena, I mean, at that point. So, yeah, I mean, that Miracle Richfield season, I know there's a generation that'll tell you that was so amazing to be a part of that.
That is cool. It's cool also that we're kind of setting up our own generation of stories between LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love, and then this new generation of the core four and the memories that they're going to continue to give us throughout this postseason. Straight ahead on Full Court Cleveland, we're driving you around the association. What's going on in the playoffs outside of Cleveland? We'll take a look right after this.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Infinity, luxury experiences for those who dare to be different. Visit infinityusa.com today.
Welcome on back into Full Court Cleveland right here on the Big Play Sports Network, proudly sponsored by our friends at Infinity. Safety has never looked this good with a suite of standard intelligent safety features. That all new QX80 is as safe as it is luxurious. The Xfinity QX80 is great for the whole family as it offers 3 spacious rows and is an IIHS top safety pick. Go check out everything has Infinity right now. Go test drive. And it's time for us to test drive around the NBA, Sam. Take a look at some of the big storylines from around other playoff series. Start here in the Eastern Conference. Boston leads Orlando 2-0. It seems like to me that series is going the way a lot of people expected it to, but the big headline is that Boston won Game 2 without Jason Tatum.
Yeah, that's the big notable thing. Listen, Orlando, we've seen this before, could be a different team at home. And last year in Cleveland, remember, they came in and looked terrible in those first 2 games. They've actually looked okay against the Celtics. Boston's going to need Jason Tatum back for Game 3, I think, against Orlando. Obviously, Cavs fans, everybody is thinking about tomorrow. What the Cavs and the Celtics. I think Cavs fans are watching what the Celtics are doing in the playoffs and vice versa. So, knowing that we're keeping track of that, I think these 2 games in Orlando, you want that series to extend as much as possible, as you do the Pacers and Bucks series, because the Cavs will play, assuming the Cavs move on, they'll play the winner of that. So, yeah, look, it's held serve so far. Boston with the number 2 seed, Orlando with number 7, but I think we'll find out how far the series can go in Game 3 in Orlando.
I love that the Cavs were able to escape that side of the bracket because I think that side of the bracket, if it does turn into the Clash of the Titans that everybody expects it to be, the Cavs and Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, it seems like the Celtics have more of the bullies on their side of the bracket, where you see Orlando beat up Jason Tatum and he missed Game 2. Then in Game 2, Kristaps Porzingis was bleeding out of his head and had to come back with that big Band-Aid on his forehead. Orlando's a physical group, and you look at who that series would have next, the winner of New York and Detroit, 2 physical teams than probably Milwaukee or Indiana. So I hope that whoever comes out of that side, they do a good job beating each other up on the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's take a look at the Knicks and Pistons series. That one's tied at 1 apiece. Big story here, the Detroit Pistons won their first playoff game in 17 years. It's been a remarkable season that JB Bickerstaff has put together for the Pistons. But Sam, now the question is, can they actually pull off this upset against the New York Knicks? I personally don't think that they can. I think that late in games, we see the same thing that ailed JB's Cavs start to ail JB's Pistons, and that guys get tired and run out of steam at the end of games. And that's how New York was actually able to win Game 1, and it almost happened again in Game 2. Any chance that Detroit could pull off this upset here?
I'm with you. I doubt it, and they're not supposed to as the number 6 seed. That said, this is a team that made such a huge leap this year, the Pistons, where, quite a turnaround last year, won 14 games. This year, win 44. Last year, lost 28 straight. This year, you're the number 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. So they've pulled off some miracles. They've got a ton of talent with Cade Cunningham. And the nice thing is that Trajan Langdon, former Cavs guard, probably going to get Executive of the Year, NBA Executive of the Year, went out and got some veterans in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. Those guys have helped push these young guys forward in Detroit. So I suspect that the Knicks are probably going to get one of those 2 games in Detroit. But like you said, Nick, they're going to beat each other up. And that's what the Cavs need in the event that they should face. Keep all the other physical teams on the other side of the bracket. The nice thing is the Cavs are playing a much more physical team in Miami than they will against Milwaukee or Indiana.
That is very true. Good point. What's interesting about the Knicks is that while I think they will make it out of the first round here, I mean, this was supposed to be their year this offseason. They added Bridges in the big trade with all the picks. They added Karl Anthony Towns, which kind of came as a surprise. I definitely didn't see that one coming. It almost seems like, though, that they've taken a small step back. Like the fact that this first-round series against the Detroit Pistons has been so highly contested, it's like, that's not the same brand of Knicks basketball that we've been accustomed to over the last 2 seasons.
No, I think they, look, at the beginning of the season, everybody was saying, well, the Cavs didn't do anything. The Knicks went out and got Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. The Sixers went out and got Paul George. Cavs just hired a coach. That's all they're going to do. So it really doesn't matter what's on paper. If you look at the Knicks, they don't seem to have the chemistry that they had last year. Even though you don't think of Julius Randle as a chemistry guy, he really made a difference there for them and fit well into their system. Karl Anthony Towns, an amazing player, better than Julius Randle. I just don't know how well he has fit overall next to Jalen Brunson. Mikal Bridges, obviously fantastic player, hasn't missed a game since high school. Just a pro's pro, but that doesn't make everybody a fit together, and I think that that's what we've seen so far with the Knicks.
Certainly has been weird. Alrighty, let's take a look at the winner of the Cavs series versus the Miami Heat is going to have the winner of the 4 versus 5, which is the Indiana Pacers and Milwaukee Bucks. It might come across as a surprise to maybe just the average NBA fan that the Indiana Pacers are up 2-0 in the first round against Giannis. Dame Lillard was back in game 2. It didn't matter. The Pacers still won that matchup, took care of their home court. Now this series is flipping over to Milwaukee. Sam, Pacers score the ball at a pretty impressive clip. How much of a threat do you think that poses to the Cavs in a potential round 2 matchup?
A big issue. Listen, the Pacers went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, right?
Battle tested,
yeah. So this is a team, and they returned everybody as well and didn't make any big splashes during the offseason, and they have the same type of familiarity that the Cavs have, and the Pacers fly very much. We think Cleveland flies under the radar. Well, the Pacers are probably, the most ignored playoff team because they never really have a whole lot of drama other than when they're fighting with the Bucks. And, I just think that they're a dangerous matchup for anybody because the one thing I've noticed about them is they're very, and I say this, they have a lot of swagger. They're pretty arrogant. They're very cocky. They're confident, and they know that they're going to score a lot of points. So you've got to try to outscore them. They don't play playoff-style basketball. They play like 1976 ABA-style basketball where it's like, hey, we're just going to go out here and try and get 200. Yep. And, they're very confident, and they've got depth. So, yeah, they can be a scary, sleepy, scary team.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to go score 201 to beat us. That's their philosophy. So we'll obviously keep it, keep a pulse on that series and keep everything covered for our Cleveland Cavaliers right here on Full Court Cleveland. Unlike the East, there are a lot of very close playoff series out west. We'll break those down when we return right here on the Big Play Network. Welcome on back into Full Court Cleveland right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Beautiful day in our Burke Lakefront Airport studios. I'm Nick Padone, filling in for our guy, Rafa Hernandez Brito. Sam Amico in studio with me as well. Sam, it sounds like the band is going to get back together, though, as these playoffs progress. Like Rafa is under the weather, so hopefully he feels better and could come back here. Booby is going to be back in the fold here throughout the rest of the postseason. So Cavs need to go on a little bit of a run because Full Court Cleveland here to stay.
I'm the Jared Allen of Full Court Cleveland. I haven't missed a game. I've started every game.
82.
And I'm going to be on Basketball Reference someday.
Look at that. Yeah. I wonder though, like, what I fear is the show, like, right before the Cavs are getting ready to win the finals. Like, are you going to do the thing where, like, you start the show, you're there for the intro, and then you just commit a foul, and then you're out of here? Yeah. So you got this. Yeah. You got to start, but nobody gets your analysis for the rest.
That's a good idea.
The rest of the program.
I'll only commit the foul on Roth.
On full of them. Yeah, okay, cool. And I'll make sure that I won't.
Both you and Booby can beat me up, so Roth and I might be even.
I like that.
We're old.
Looking out west, there are a lot of good playoff series. Can't really say the same about the Eastern Conference, at least yet. A lot of early dominance so far in the East. But out west, Oklahoma City, we'll start with this one. 2-0 against the Memphis Grizzlies, and the poor Grizzlies just don't look like they belong.
No, I mean, you talk about a team that fired its coach in Memphis 10 days before the playoffs started, which, of course, were outdone by the Nuggets, but we might touch on that. But the Grizzlies, to me, they're not only a poor matchup for Oklahoma City, they just don't have – they're not in a good place, it seems like, culture-wise right now. And Oklahoma City has taken that and run with it. You know, they're such a good defensive, physical team.
And they're in a great place culture-wise. It is kind of
they're
like two
fantastic,
polar opposites.
Yes. Yeah. And you look at their depth, and then when all else fails with Oklahoma City, they get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the ball and get out of the way. And I mean, we saw what they did to the Cavs at Oklahoma City, right? So they have that potential to blow teams out because they just are so physical and they just wear you down. And Memphis just doesn't stand a chance. I would assume that's going to be over in 4.
Yeah.
Mercifully.
Me too. Mercifully is right. I almost wonder if this is the offseason where the Memphis Grizzlies could just look at their own situation through all the stuff that they stuck with John Morant through and decide that now could be the time to say goodbye, get a massive return back. I don't know that that's the right thing to do, but I'm just looking at them and I could see that maybe they might think that now could be the time to move Ja.
Well, you'd have to start thinking about that. I don't think it's necessarily his fault that they are where they are. I think, you know, when you look at a team that was number 2 in the West for a lot of this season before falling off at the end, he's a huge reason for that. So you have to be very careful. And like you said, you would want a huge return, and you'd have to find a team that would be interested enough to give you a huge return. So, you know, Memphis is probably, yes, Nick, you're probably right. They're one of those teams that are going to benefit my website greatly because there's going to be all kinds of rumors and drama coming out of there, and that's probably going to be their off season.
Yeah, I could really see that happening. Alrighty, let's keep going in the West. Rockets versus the Warriors. This series now tied up at 1 apiece. The Rockets were able to get one back in game 2. How much does Jimmy Butler's injury change things in this series? Because game 1, it looked like it was going to be easy work for the Warriors. Don't sleep on the old guard. Game 2, a little bit closer. Rockets able to get the job done. And then Jimmy Butler's injury, he's getting an MRI question mark right now. Yeah. To me, that could be massive. That could be the Rockets' way out of what could have been a highly contentious 7-game series.
Yeah, and that's a great point. If you look at the Warriors before the Jimmy Butler trade, and you know they were starting to really fade, and it looked like they might not even make the playoffs. And then when Jimmy Butler came on board, it really opened things up for even more for Steph Curry, and I think it really helped their role players, took some of the pressure off of them. So, yeah, you know, I have a hard time seeing Golden State win that series if Jimmy Butler's out for any, you know, if he's missing 2 games or something, that could really be trouble for the Warriors. If he's able to play and be close to himself, Golden State has home court advantage. That series that could be, fantastic, go all 7 games, and then the winner would get the winner of the Lakers Timberwolves, which could go all 7 games. So, yeah, Jimmy Butler to me is the key to that series.
A lot of chaos out west, truly, because there's a piece of me, I feel like a lot of people in Cleveland probably still hold a grudge against Golden State, and for good reason. That was a incredibly fun rivalry over that span 4 or 5 years. To me, though, there's something interesting about the Warriors being the 7th seed and the fact that they just weren't really that good all year, and they adopted Jimmy Butler, who had a messy divorce with the Miami Heat, and then things just turned out to be beautiful sunshine and rainbows for them, and it looked like they could easily have their way with Houston in game 1. I would like to see Jimmy Butler. Hopefully he's healthy, because I think this could be a really good series that goes the distance if Jimmy Butler is good to go. And we know young teams just tend to struggle in the postseason. So Houston has put together an awesome year. Ime Udoka is probably the guy that could challenge Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year in the NBA. But at the end of the day, they're a young, inexperienced team without a whole lot of playoff experience. So,
yeah, and that's, like you said, that's always a trouble spot in the playoff or in the postseason is how much playoff experience do you have? Well, these guys on Houston together have none until now. Obviously Fred VanVleet won a title, but with the Raptors. But when you talk about this team together, and then you talk about the playoff experience of Steph, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, there are a few threesomes that have that much NBA playoff experience.
We're going to step aside on Full Court Cleveland. We'll continue our breakdown of the NBA playoffs. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Fairway Ford, the largest inventory of new Ford trucks, the lowest pricing, and same hometown level of service. Visit fairwayfordohio.com today.
Welcome on back into Full Court Cleveland right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Nick Padone, Sam Amico wrapping this thing up. The Lakers and Timberwolves tied at 1 apiece. That's a fun series, officially.
Yeah, when Minnesota went in there and won game 1, you think the Lakers, obviously they have Luka and LeBron, but do they have enough around those two guys to get out of this series? Minnesota, another team kind of like the Western Conference version of the Pacers, right? Nobody expected them to get to the conference finals last season, and they did it. And granted, this is a newer group when you throw in Julius Randle, but, they go as Anthony Edwards goes. And if he's on fire, which he can catch fire, this series could go Minnesota's way, even though they're the underdog, which I wouldn't expect LeBron to get beat out in the first round. But
Same.
Minnesota's no joke.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards, really good. He thinks and believes that he's the face of the league, and this is another opportunity for him to prove that. All right, last one. Nuggets, Clippers tied at 1 apiece. A lot of people calling this series the best of the first round series. Game 1 went to overtime. Game 2 was a 3-point game. This one has the making to go 7 games as well.
Yeah, and it is the best series so far. Every game has come down to the last possession, the first 2 games in Denver. Be interesting to see the Nuggets, who fired their coach, who won them a championship 2 years ago, and their GM, same time, 4 days before the end of the season. Is that how are you going to do on the road now that you got to go to LA? I think that's a big mystery, but so far for the first 2 games, both games going down to the final possession, can't beat that.
No, it's been absolute cinema out west. It's been a whole lot of fun hanging out with you, Sam, on Full Court Cleveland today. Obviously, busy weekend here in Cleveland. NFL draft, Cavs postseason continues on. Guards homestand over at Progressive Field. Beautiful time in Cleveland, Ohio.
And the weather's nice. Roth always likes to talk that we're at Burke Lakefront Airport and looking out at the lake. And today's a great day to do it. I remember driving up here like a month ago, and it was like freezing snow. So, yeah, what a great weekend for Cleveland, and hope the Browns make the right choice.
Hey, don't screw it up is the one thing that we could hope for out of the NFL draft. and we'll leave that there. The rest of the shows here on the Big Play Sports Network could cover that. Alrighty, make sure to show Sam Amico some love out there on the social media streets at Amico Hoops. I'm Nick Padone. Make sure to download that Big Play Sports Network app. That's where you could watch all of our great shows videos on demand, all of our interviews on demand. You don't want to miss a second of the best Cleveland sports coverage in town. Thanks so much for tuning in to Full Court Cleveland. We'll see you next week.